Welcome to the Circuspreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Shanice Stiletto. We are sponsored by StageLink.com. And this is where creativity meets advocacy, and the business of circus is reimagined. And I am here today, not just to support circus on the stage, but also at the decision making table. And joining me is someone who knows circus from the inside out. He is an artist, creator, and fellow circus savant, Martin Frenette. And together today, we are asking the real questions. What happens when circus artists step into civic spaces? How does movement become message? And can balancing on our hands help us better balance policy? This isn't just about performing anymore. It's about representation, and it's about bringing the story of circus into the rooms where laws are written and futures are shaped. That's a little bit official for how we talk, but welcome to the podcast, or welcome back, actually, Martin.
Thank you.
It's been a minute since
I've
we.
been waiting
Oh,
for
yeah,
this return to your podcast. It's been a
yeah.
few years, yeah.
Yeah. It's been a few years. It's been a few years too long. It's been a few years too long. I
Ooh.
feel like we've had some conversations that have been podcast worthy.
WhatsApp has been an amazing podcast platform that no one has tipped into, unfortunately.
Right. Somebody will, and maybe that's our next act.
It will be the
You get it?
archive will get found by someone in the desert and they will be revealed.
Yes, at some point in time, and it'll be it'll be a hilarious politically circus, politically incorrect circus. We've been throwing out a couple of different titles for this episode over the last couple weeks and deciding how we were gonna do this. And I think that was a good one. And you definitely find out in all of our what's-ups, because that's how we spar, that's how we get down, that's how we relate to one another. And you're my favorite circus politics friend, or circus political friend. What do we say? What do we call it? What do we how do we
Politic geek posing as an aerialist. Because I don't know
I,
many trapeze artists or rope artists that are deep into watching our lovely leaders fighting about issues while they're doing splits, which is what I do. While I'm in over splits, I'm listening to the government passing laws and debating over issues. So yeah, I know
yeah,
many
yeah.
aerialists that do that.
Right, and I'm doing it in handstands. Yep, I'm usually,
Yeah.
upside down, twirling on my canes, and watching Breaking Point, which is one of my favorite ways to absorb the political news, to be civically engaged. However you want to call it, to my civic duty, or see kind of what's happening, in the course of the world, actually, because, for me, it's not just limited to American politics. I know that American politics takes up a lot of energy in the room for a lot of people, but, the political climate is a very diverse conversation. And for the circus, obviously, like, we are a very worldly bunch. You are currently living in Stuttgart, but you are originally from Canada, and I have been bouncing over for the better part of my entire life, and am currently living and residing in the States, which has been an interesting space for me for these past several years.
To
And
say the
being,
least.
yeah, to say the least, being very up close and personal with all the willings and dealings of our government. As folks know, I spend a fair amount, I would say, engaging in DC in person, and also too virtually, behind the scenes, if you will. Right? Yeah. So, you know, I I make my way.
Well, also, I mean, honestly, if you look at like the late hosts, like the late show's hosts, like Jimmy Kimmel or Stephen Colbert, who at time are getting heat for all you always talk about Trump and about politics. Yeah, well, they entertain, and I think people pay more attention actually. So because it's not like an actually like news channel, people are getting somehow entertained at the same time. But the news are the same. whether it's read by like a late night host or an actual journalist at his desk at CNN, the news is the same, but a late night show host will make it a bit funner. So, as us artists as well, I think someone like you being in DC and representing not only artists or Americans, but just like human beings, you have a different voice, a different take because you are also an artist. So, you may have different wording, but the message will come across nevertheless.
I think they get a kick out of my wording sometimes, and that is not a joke. Sometimes I get the most interesting responses of like, wow, wow, we've never met someone like you before, or this is a fascinating conversation. We never thought about the circus in that light. Oftentimes they think of politics and they use circus as kind of like, the bunt of so
Yeah.
many jokes, right? And that can get hurtful. So I think, through the course of the podcast and, trying to have more complex conversations that we usually have in the circus anyway. It's not like we just started having these conversations. People have been obviously very civically engaged and high minded for years in the circus. It's a very refined and fascinating group. But folks in those spaces in government and, whatever, they don't, usually talk to a lot of us. And I think that they get a kick out of, when we enter the room. And I think we provide a really interesting perspective about, how do we balance living in this world and being engaged in that way politically and also to, existing in the circus because the circus is like such a lifestyle. And, you really have to wear a ton of hats when you are in our industry. And I think people in our industry are some of the most intellectually savvy folks when it comes to the political sphere because everyone is in any type of country or any space and anywhere in the world at any point in time engaging with somebody else in real time. And I think that that is such like a fascinating way to be in the world, right? Like that's what keeps me engaged. And I end up knowing, so many things where people are like, oh, how did you know that was going on there? I'm like, well, they just opened a show.
But also, like, even when you say that our leaders don't really talk with Oscars people, and I always think it is a shame because I would like people to know we don't only do the splits and throw stuff in the air.
Right. Right.
Some circus people are extremely eloquent, educated, and excellent communicators. And when you think about it, we always have to sell ourselves and explain. Like, if you want to get a grant or get booked on a show, you have to use the right words.
Right.
And when it's come to researching a market or a country, or we need to research, read, process, find the right words. And I think there are such brilliant minds in the circus world that unfortunately aren't getting heard. I have a few names in mind. When is your memoir coming out on even philosophy? Even though you're a juggler, I want to read your memoir on philosophy because you have a unique take on it. Yeah.
Oh, I like the sound of that. Again, folks that juggle a lot of capacities,
Yeah.
literally and and figuratively. Yeah, we're just like not people. I think that you can put inside of a box. Only when we want to be.
Yeah. Well, when the time is right, when the lights go on and you need to be split in half, get in the box there.
Been there, done that. As challenging and as scary as everybody thinks.
Yeah.
Okay, like I like to be on that end, but not every day.
Can be a bit demanding to always have to put yourself back together in one piece. Indeed, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and then and show up.
And have the six pack ad never left, even though they've been cut in two.
And make it to the bow. Some things are just, and hold your breath. I mean, I've done the whole gambit. Yeah, it could be a tricky thing. But yeah, it's I think it's really, important for those of us where this conversation is important. And for some people in the industry, it isn't actually that important to them. They see other things as, as their bigger focus. But I think the more we start to get engaged, the more it inspires other people within the industry to get engaged, which I see that as a really powerful step. Also, too, in I think this generation of circus, where people are looking towards circus laws. They're not just looking for just small different pieces of the pie. We're looking for a bigger seat at the table of being engaged, of making sure that like one of us is in the room, which I have found, like just super advantageous, and which I think is something that's very important, because if you don't set the barometer for where your industry is going, somebody else is going to set it for you. And we are a group that really likes to be in control, and we like to be involved. We're very hands on. So I think it's a shame that if we are left out of that conversation with how hands on we all are. I mean, you don't get to be an artist like yourself or like me, or so many of the other artists that we know that are super proactive. You don't get that far in having a career like this that isn't easy, to have or to keep, or to justify. I mean, like, we're all justifying what we do every single day. Sometimes people ask me about justifying things politically, and I'm like, oh, don't worry. I have to justify my existence as a circus performer to people every single day. What show are you in? Well, how long have you been working here? Have you ever worked for that company? Well, have you worked with this person? Do you know that person? Do you know that director? Have you worked with that agent? Well, what's your background? Did you come from this circus school? Did you come from sport? I mean, you're just constantly, how do you make it? Is this your only job? Do you work somewhere else? Do you have a bigger career than this? Do you have a degree? Did you go to school? Did you go to college? I mean, it's a, it's a lot. It's a lot in
But
defense of the circus, right?
and it really goes beyond the state, as you were saying, like with the degree question. I've had many people ask me or ask other like people in the industry, but where's your degree in X or Y? Even 20 something years ago, when
Yeah.
Circuspreneur started, Shanna Carroll told me, well, not that, but at the time, told me when they were getting a grant to start a company, like they were asked, okay, well, so like theater director will direct the show. No, no, circus people will direct the show. And are dance people going choreograph? No, no. Circus people can direct and choreograph, but you didn't study that. So this reality of like, oh, circus people can do more. Like we don't have the degree or the masters or like the college, whatever, like the Ivy League education behind us, even though some have. But to think, well, when you've been in an industry for 10, 20, how many years, doesn't matter. You have, like, I always say, I wish often there were more circus people actually in the government and in those industries, like in those agencies, because we have like the show must go on. It's a cliche, but it's true. I think every circus person has the emergency in their blood. Like, okay, well, we need to find a solution. We just need to fix. Like, there's a show in half an hour. Two people
Right.
are sick and throwing up. What can we do? Okay, go.
Right. And there's no understudies. There's no
No.
backup. We are the backup.
Yes.
You are now the backup. Well, that's a good question for you bringing that up in terms of like the show goes on, because like we do have some questions for this episode, folks. I know it seems like sometimes things are very off the cuff, but we do a little bit of homework,
We
and
have a plan.
we have a little bit of a plan for this episode. We're not going to do it as off the cuff as our conversations usually are, because I don't think people can handle that. They definitely they could not handle that. But if America, we're bringing this back to the States, because obviously the States again takes up
Mhm.
so much energy. And yes, we do acknowledge that America is not the center of the universe, but America does hold a lot of
Influence.
cards. They have a lot of influence in the world, and that can't be lost on, and I don't think it's lost on anybody. People really pay attention to what America
Mhm.
does. But yes, there are, the world is very big, and there are many spaces in the world that are very also too influential and very important to the demographic and conversation. But Martin, if America were a circus show right now, that one's juicy. What act would we be watching? Comedy, acrobatics, or controlled chaos?
None of that. I think we'd be watching the tent being built up and
Ooh,
people asking too many questions instead of just like getting the props and pulling the tent, I really think we are actually in a phase right now where we realize, okay, we're missing too many pieces and the motors aren't working. Help. I think we are in a, not in a crisis, but now we are building and trying to rebuild, and like the field is empty and it needs a tent to be risen, like to rose. So I
Mm.
don't think we're at an act yet. We just need to build the tent first place and follow the way the Swiss do it. It's they always do the same way, but it works. They put a tent up. It can rain, it can snow. The tent goes up, and I think we're in a place now where we just need to stop looking, stop pointing fingers at who forgot to bring their hammer, whatever it is. Just build the tent.
I love that. Just collaborate, work
Yes,
together.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great, also too, because in the circus, whether or not you want to collaborate, you are going to collaborate,
You don't have a
right?
choice.
You don't have a choice because someone doesn't effectually speak the same language as you.
Yeah.
Again, very different backgrounds. And then just also, too, very different life circumstances coming into a show, right? I mean,
Mhm.
I might, be coming from caravan life. You might be coming from hotel life. Another person might be coming from, I live full time local life. Like,
Mhm.
those are all three very big different demographics coming into a show. Some people want to live on outside the circus. Other people, again, would like to have their laundry done inside of a space where it's a controlled environment. Other people, it's not a big deal. I mean, these are questions and tasks that we realistically look at when we're going to take a contract, when we're going to go do a show. I mean, like, I know it's always like on my list, like, what is like my day to day going to look like? And
Mhm.
again, the day to day, in terms of our government is like, yes, maybe you are all coming from this, but guess what? You can still find a way to meet somewhere, not necessarily maybe in the middle, because I know people don't like hearing that, but we know how to just get things done in circus. And, I think the threat of not being able to get things done is a really big challenge that we're facing right now, too. And that's a very dangerous thing because if you can't get things done, then people don't get the important things that they need. If you can't put certain things aside to do those very, important collaborations. What part of government or politics do you feel is center stage at the moment? And then what do you think deserves a bigger spotlight?
I think what is taking too much pace right now, what is at the center stage, unfortunately, as I said before, is finger pointing. And we like, oh, for instance, if you just look at the shutdown, the Democrats kept saying, oh, it's the Republican shutdown. Republicans, oh, it's Democrats shutdown. Am I listening to my niece and nephews that are in their very, very early age? Like, I really feel like, and like, even there's no more centrist. It's just like, you are this, you are that. Can
Right,
we don't label everyone and even accept
right,
that if we just stop putting the blame on something or someone, we could actually find a solution. But if you focus too much time on where's the leak coming from, you're gonna be soaking wet. If you just like put a bucket or close the pipe, whatever it is, the leak will stop and you will be dry. But right now, I think at the center stage is just division. Actually, people want to be put or want to put others in a box in a category. And like a small anecdote, but like I was recently on a show and there was an American on the show and she threw something plastic, like a plastic bottle, in the trash. And another castmate, European, looked at her and said, "Oh, I didn't know you were a Trumpist."
oh,
And I really like froze halfway to my makeup and was, "What did I miss here?" Oh well, she doesn't believe in climate change and she doesn't recycle. Okay, so because on this one moment she threw a plastic bottle in the trash, she never recycles, doesn't believe in plastic change, and voted for Trump. Sure. So I think right now at the center stage, we need to stop passing judgment and trying to put everyone in a certain box and a label, because and even if you look like that same issue comes up when it comes to diversity and like how with the gerrymandering right now, clearly it is aiming for Black communities and Latinos, and it's why do we need to aim for these areas and those states or those like neighborhoods that are more of one ethnicity when everyone should have the same right to vote and not have to show 20 more pieces of ID and a blood sample to show that they can vote, you know?
I mean, like, why isn't it just a nationally recognized holiday where people get the day off? And then
Yes.
again, it's a law. I think in Australia, it's a law. If you don't vote, you get a fine. Like they give you a ticket if you don't vote. And I think we could do something like that here. And I mean, okay, maybe we don't have to give people a ticket, but give people the day off. It should be a
Mhm.
holiday. It should be celebrated. It's the most important, one of the most important days of the year. I mean, so that people can also too have some space to look at who their candidates are. I mean, we just had a really big election here, obviously, right? And there was, a really big shift in the demographic. And I think that just goes to show again for people, there are no boxes. People are not linear when it comes to politics. I don't care what anybody says. The way
Mhm.
that we just saw politics shift in this last election was huge. So many
Mhm.
people, they voted completely different from how they voted last year. I mean, completely different. And we know that because of who got elected in this
Yes.
current cycle. And, for me, I just think that people are so much more multifaceted than that. And you can't even just say if they're a certain way on one issue, that that's the only person that they are, that that's all of who they are. They might vote with you on the other 25 things. There might be one other core issue that is just not something that they're interested in. You can't say necessarily if you do that vote, you're definitely going to continue to vote that way indefinitely. It is absolutely untrue. If you give people strong enough reasons to not vote for something, they actually will not do it. They will not do it. They can see through the facades, they can see through things. Or again, they don't really need to see through anything if you're kind of throwing it in their face of things that you maybe said that you would represent, and they are quickly seeing that you are no longer representing those things. Well, they are going to find a way to vote against you or vote against any of those things that would help you to drive home those things that they don't want to see or support. And so people just have a lot of power. And I think that comes back to why it's so important for, those of us in our industries and in our communities to vote for what is important for us, or even just discover what is important to you and kind of not look away from that again, because you can shift conversations very quickly. And I'm very curious of what this next upcoming election will be, for even 2026, right? Because there are a lot of folks that that participated even in the shutdown, that their seats will be up for reelection
Mhm.
in 2026. So even in terms of whatever you were upset about with whoever handled the shutdown, if somebody didn't handle that appropriately or it didn't come from the way that you felt like it should have been handled, well, guess what? Look and see if they are going to be up for election this next cycle. And then if you know people in that district, in that state, in that circus space, because we're speaking to our community,
Mhm.
hey, why don't you get engaged and get involved and throw your weight into those races, because again, these bigger races obviously very important, but these last races on these local levels are what is so important. The judges, the
Mhm.
gerrymandering. I mean, they
Yeah.
passed something really big in California, which they thought they would never do, because California again is considered this very liberal state, coming as from somebody who's originally from California. California is incredibly diverse, and there's a very big swath of California that is incredibly conservative, by the way. But they never thought that they would do a gerrymandering bill in California, or redistricting. Help me out, Martin. You got this
I
subject
got
most
this.
of the times better than me. But on that side, because they saw that this was being done in states that would be traditionally the spaces to do that. And so, they said, well, why don't we now do that? Why don't we meet their stance with our stance, which is kind of a new stance. Now, whether or not you agree with that, I'm just saying what happened, not necessarily what we're for, what we're against here. But again, Martin, you just so eloquently described what those efforts are for. And so, again, seeing a space that people wouldn't expect in California to do that, again, makes you rethink how much power you have as a constituency, as a voter, and then as folks that are civically or politically engaged. So those things, you can meet fire with fire, and you can go toe to toe with spaces that you feel are, I don't know, maybe not fighting fair, or, not fighting above the belt, but where can you use policy to effectuate policy changes too, right? Like, I think that is something to remember. And yeah. So, what do you think? What's the next one that I want to do? Okay. That's interesting. Well, circus is all about ensemble. How does that compare to political or civic life today? You kind of spoke to that in a way, but I feel like you could maybe speak to that even more, because that's kind of cute. I like that.
Well, I think there it is, like ensemble, and as we've said many times off stage, it takes it takes a village to make a show. And I think we really learn quickly, for instance, when you are building up a tent, or even like I was, even with my big shape, I was a puller at times for under Irelist. We need people. And okay, well, even as simple as even you, the contortionist or the ambulance that doesn't have a big prop, you need someone to just like open the curtain for you. We all need. I love in a way the fact that there is no. Like, if you look at a ballet company, there are principals, there are soloists. Not saying that they're more important than the corps de ballet, but there are like quote unquote the stars. When it comes to circus, we just all need to be there, and we all need to rely on each other and support each other. And the thing I like in pretty much every show I've been a part of, when it comes to, oh, we need someone to bring in Victor's balls on the stage, or oh, we need someone to make sure that Lucy's chair will be there on time, there are no fights. I've never been in a place where people were like
Yeah.
hiding. Like,
No.
oh well, no, because like I might need someone's help eventually, or if someday my butt is showing, I would like the person behind me to pull down my costume, or there really is this community feeling. And I think the thing I'm most grateful for when I look at my career is how actually the amount of people I've met and of different cultures I've been exposed to, because it doesn't matter again where did you come from, college, from a circus school, from the street, from caravan, from, you are in that show with me. You may be
Hmm.
from Bulgaria, from France, from the US, from God knows where, but at the end of the day, we all, and obviously being physical people, we have body language. And even when you speak only like two words of that person's whatever they speak, Ethiopian, or well, your body language speaks a lot. And I think through the years, also I've seen people being careful, even the way they behave physically, the way they even like shake hands before a show. Like I've noticed sometime before the show, the way we hug, or yeah, we shake hands, or there is like if you don't speak someone's language, or if you don't know someone that clearly, you will maybe grab their back a different way, or like in a polite way. I think there is. I might be a bit just going to utopia here, but I think we are less, or actually we're more colorblind in a good way. We don't need our backstage to be all white or all black or all brown or all. No, wait, it's like multicolored, and that's the beauty of it. It's. I'm gonna quote. I have to. I'm gonna quote the great Tina Fey here, who once said, "You don't want to be a bunch of Caucasian people in the room trying to discuss what a black person would say. You bring in the black person, the same way you wouldn't do a soup with only one ingredient. It's the same thing for a show. I'm like, I don't want to be in a show with all 16 years old from the same academy, or only 40 years old. I've been working for 20 years in the same country. Like, you want diversity in terms of experience and of life, of backgrounds, of ethnicity. And I think this ensemble can be very rich. And I've learned in like a silly, like, very silly, but I've learned new recipes on each show. Like people swap
Yeah.
recipes, and like, oh, and like we make a potluck, and oh wait, how did you bake that little fluffy thing. Oh, cool! I will try it. And then
I
5 years
love
later, oh, I'm baking Orleans pie tonight, and it's still there. Yeah.
Yeah, like Friendsgiving. I mean, like I've had some of my best Thanksgivings not in America because the entire cast got together and they were like, we want to give you a Thanksgiving experience. And it's been so special and, so sweet and just so like absolutely lovely. And I think, we've like all been informed by being around so many different environments. I think we're all global citizens. That's what I like to think of myself whenever I'm in any room. And I love what you said too about like when you notice who is around you. And I think that's something really important. And I think like the overall respect that we all do have when we come together and do a show. I mean, sometimes we're existing off of so little ability to communicate, and the amount of things that get done I think is just truly exceptional in our industry and the
Mhm.
amount of decorum and the amount of interest and love. I mean, you can literally become somebody's very close or best friend within the course of a couple of days. I know people now that I met very briefly, but had so much involvement with them during a show,
Mhm.
and we still know each other. And the fact that you can go into almost any space in the world, and if you're Circus and you see somebody else who's Circus, that is an immediate friend. It is an immediate friend. It is an immediate ally in a way that I don't think people really can grasp. How you can also, too, maybe even find one person in common, which is, I think, extraordinary. You could be just, wow, like think that there's, maybe not one thing that could bridge even that gap. And then you talk and you talk and you talk, you find a way to communicate, you use your phone, you use whatever you use. And you're like, oh my gosh, like we totally know this person, or we've been in the same show, or, we've been in some space that was similar in some kind of way. And I think that we could really use that, again, coming back to the way that people see the circus and say, oh, the politics right now is such a circus. No, you could use us. You
Mhm.
could use you could use our circusness inside of what is going on in these spaces, because I think the diplomacy that we have within our industry is very extra special. Again, we're not trying to say that everything is perfect in the circus. I know that everyone, would want us to acknowledge that, and we'll always acknowledge that no industry and no space is perfect, and every space is forever evolving. But to open, I think, the minds of folks in terms of like how we coordinate and how we exist in this world, and that extra specialness and the lens that we see our government through, or other governments in the world or the political sphere, is through very unique eyes. And so we are coming to the last like minute or so of the podcast, Martin. We do need to wrap it up, even though I could speak to you all day long.
We're just getting started here.
We are just revving our engines. I know. And this is a very small, small, small piece. Like I said, we are giving you a sliver of how deep and the depth of where our conversations
Please
usually
beg for part two online. Ask
can
for more.
go. There might be a part two coming. Hey, there might be a part three coming. There might be an additional series,
Many
uh,
installments. Yeah.
mini installments between me and Martin. But let's see here. So I think maybe to round out our conversation, let's bring it back to something really funny. Uh, because it's very hard in some ways for people to laugh right now, and to again have some fun with things that are going on, because things sometimes feel very heavy, or that people just have to fight all the time. But what is the funniest thing you've seen in the political arena recently, other than everybody involved? And something that truly qualifies as, this is bringing circus into this, but only in the best way, as some type of a clown act. And how do we keep our sense of humor even when the show feels messy?
Well, we discussed this before we started actually recording, so I will repeat myself now, but probably in regards to the Epstein files,
Mm.
when months ago it was established, oh, no, there are no need for further investigations, and no, like we don't need to pursue this, it is over. And then the same person, Pat Bundy, who was really straight about, oh no, there's no need for an investigation. When asked, why are you starting these new investigations now on Bill Clinton and all these Democrats? Oh, well, We found information. I was having a hot cup of chai latte and I spat on my wall. I was like, like there was information, but now there is information. Okay, I had to laugh. I was like, okay, well, it just so I have to laugh. It's just ridiculous. Like information. Could you be more vague,
Can
please?
you be more vague, Pam? I mean, we know where she comes from, Miss. I had a lot of power in Florida when a particular person, could have been held accountable in a lot of several ways, and I did nothing.
Mm.
And now I'm in DC and throwing up my hands, and I'm also so concerned about all the files that are there that I wasn't concerned about when I was in a certain state. We'll mention it, Florida, and I had so much power to influence how this individual was going to be tried, was going to be held accountable. And I, kind of halfway, a little bit participated in that sweetheart deal that led to him continuing to have years and years and years of more influence, power, and the ability to abuse young girls. Hmm.
Yes.
Yes. How interesting. We're so glad that now you've decided to stand up because you couldn't have done anything before you got into the position that you're in now. So, take your time. Please, not too much of a coordinated effort to stop the release of those files, which, again, for everybody seeing how there was a particular pivot, which I thought was hilarious. The pivot didn't matter because all of the necessary networks had already voted to release the files. So that particular person didn't have to make a U-turn
No.
to to release these files because the writing was already on the wall. All of the representatives had already voted to do that. So I am looking forward to this being less messy moving forward, but I don't think that that is going to be the case, especially with something that is so, everybody's so charged about it, but people want so much so much to come from the release of these files. And I'll
Mhm.
be very curious to see how this goes. There's already, like I said, some coordinated efforts to maybe block how these files are going to be distributed and what we are going to see, even within the overall release of them. But yes, I thought that was also hilarious in terms of how Pam Bondi was relaying that particular information, which we know that, again, it went from there is so much there to nothing to see here, folks, nothing on the video, nothing to see here. We didn't see a thing. Nothing ever happened. I don't know. We never spoke about this before. I wasn't speaking about this before. This was never something that I was motivated to investigate prior to this. So again, a lot of actors involved. For those of you who have not listened to my podcast on the Epstein files and the Epstein survivors, please do listen. I released that episode, I think, just a few days ago. And that is my personal perspective as a survivor of USA Gymnastics in supporting the survivors of Epstein. Because when you've been a part of a prolific abuse ring, as I was as a young child, these things hit differently when you see so many of the similarities and you see folks trying to pivot away from revealing the truth and holding people accountable. So that there's nothing funny about that. But I'm glad that we can find something to laugh about within these scenarios that are not funny, that it takes, I think, a good level of emotional perspicacity to, find the humor in these spaces. And I will thank the circus for giving us both that. Because as a default, as an artist, I am glad that I have, I think, a softer space to land on because I think we have a reserve that is unique and can at least soften the edges of things within life and in the political atmospheres that could be deemed otherwise intrusive and negative and very challenging to accept. But there are positive things on the horizon. like I said, we have seen some new figures that have come into these spaces that I think are a breath of fresh air. And I'm very curious to see how they will pivot in favor of what they campaigned on, because you are, to me, only as good as what you are able to get done post your election.
True, true. Which it feels, although I have to say, the last year's, especially last elections, it feels like it was all about the campaign. And once you got into office, whether it's as a mayor, a president, or whatever it is, oh, well, now I'm here. I have a comfy seat. Yeah, but you spent the last month saying you would do X, Y, and Z. When is this happening,
Right.
you know?
Right, exactly. And that's the most important part for me. It's not only getting people elected or only getting elected, it's, and are you doing anything that you said? And if you're pivoting away from certain things that you said, how can we hold you accountable for that pivot? Because
But
we
even now
remember
to
what you
see,
said 3 months ago.
like this week, Zoran Mamdani already asked to meet Trump. He was just elected and was already getting some nice names from the men in the White House. So, but he's like, no, I got elected and I told the people I would take care of these issues. So I'm going to talk to the man now, because if you're a mayor, it doesn't matter in which city, in which country, you want to talk to the president or the prime minister. Like, and he did already. He's been
Yes.
elected, like, what, it was 2 weeks ago, and now he was in the White House already. So I think there is something that I'm looking for in this new generation of, like, the Jasmine Crockett, the AOC, the Zoran Mamdani. Not saying all the other generation, like the older people, are not good anymore, but this fresh take, this new energy, this, like, desire to change the world, and frankly, they're going to be there much longer than the older folks. And my nieces and nephews are going to be there much longer than I will, so they need to be involved as well. I mean, they don't
Yeah.
really, most of them for now, but, like, still, they're getting there.
I mean, we see people like Nancy Pelosi now retiring. I
Yeah.
mean, it's the end of an era with political figures like her resigning. Again, other folks cycling out. Dick Cheney, prolific conservative
Hmm.
figure, just
Hmm.
passed away. And yeah, there's definitely a new political climate. But my most important thing is it's not about what you say, it's about what you do, and it's about what you're able to get done. And again, reminding people that that is what is also important. Like you said, once you get that seat at the table, does it become so cushy that you don't run a ruffle too many feathers to get the things done that you promised everybody that you would get done? And yes, it matters. If the person in a certain position is going to be the most instrumental in getting the things done for your constituents, you might want to meet with them and have a conversation or two.
Yes. Or three, even. Go for three.
Go for three. Go, yeah, go for it. Go for it. But thank you so much, Martin. This was a fantastic conversation. Today I loved it. You're so great. You're so amazing. You're just so brilliant, and I love sparring back and forth with you on the political in circusness, politically in circus, whatever we're calling this. We're still working on the title, folks, but thank you everyone for tuning into the podcast. I'm your host, Shanae Stiletto. Please like and subscribe to the podcast. Thank you. Another big shout out to stagelinks.com. Thank you everyone for tuning in to every single episode and to my episode with Martin Frenette. And please comment and let us know what you're thinking. If you want more of this episode, more of this conversation, we can go for days, folks.
We
We
can
can go
go.
for days. We can bring it back. But until next time, everyone, please stay safe and stay healthy.